Well, hello there. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the A Full Quota podcast. This is your South African cricket podcast, your number one South African cricket podcast, to give you everything that you need to know about South African cricket. If you feel like you've seen Tim and myself throughout this week, yes, you have. We've done it's like the third podcast of the week, but we love it nonetheless because this is the most important one of the week, largely because the Momentum Proteas are about to play in a semi-final against England. The last time the two teams played, England won by 2 wickets with 2 balls to spare. The last game they played, South Africa won that game as well. I think it was quite late in the piece. I think England needed another spinner in the last over. South Africa managed to get over the line with 3 wickets. So it's quite interesting. So we've got Melissa ready to chat to us. But Tim, how are you doing? There's some Proteas discussion happening. You're telling me about Keshav telling us that there's grass on the pitch, but it's a 4-day pitch, and I don't see this game lasting 5 days. But there will be rain. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. As you say, we can have all our eyes peeled on this particular game, but it's a big week for both men and women. But looking forward to the semi final. I think that's the big thing. I'm not so much worried. I'm looking forward to it. So it should be a cracking game.
You're not so much worried as you're looking forward to it. I'm actually excited. I think for me that's what it is. But let's bring Melissa and let's have a chat with her. Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
Hi, good. Thank you. Nervous too, I must say.
Look, I think for me, I'm not a superstition person, and I think they asked Sune about this today as to how much of it, because obviously everyone's talking about like the winning the game and trying to get through, and how much of it is enjoying. And I'd like to enjoy this experience. I think as a South African cricket fan, and I don't like to refer to the men's team when we talk about the women's team, but as a South African cricket fan, semi-finals are always tense. And I think the team that's less tense actually will end up winning. And so for me, I want them to actually go out and enjoy, because I think they've played some great. I haven't played the best cricket, but played some good cricket. So I just want them to just enjoy the moment, forget about what happened in 2017, and because if they play to their thing, I think they can win. But yeah, that's why we have you here, so we can discuss England as we go through through this podcast. But just a quick reminder, please, to everyone who's listening to us, if you want to listen to commentary of the game, we'll be live at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning to bring you everything that you need to know. Just subscribe to our channel, One World Sports Radio. Melissa, my first question to you is, England's tournament has been roller coaster. It started off with 3 losses. At that point when South Africa won that game, what did you think they were going to make it to the semi-finals?
No, entirely not. And I think a lot of the England women's players have actually spoken out too, and they were going, we didn't think it was possible for us to qualify either. Kate Cross has come out and gone, we were just assumed we were heading back as soon as we needed to. But there was definitely a bit of dismay, I think, after the South Africa game, especially with, and again, what you're saying, don't like to bring the men into it too much, but it's not exactly like our men are having a great time at the moment either. So it's not the best time to be an England cricket fan, but now that they have qualified into the semi-finals, it almost feels as if the entire England cricket fan base is just clutching onto this game just for a tiny little bit of hope. So it's quite miraculous they're there, to be honest. I think everyone would agree.
Yeah. When we had you on earlier, you went through the squad, you went through the players, you told us ones to watch out for, and you said that Natalie Siver would be crucial to England's progress and how far they would go, and that's happened. She's been excellent in this tournament. Her numbers are right up there. She's got more runs than anyone else in the squad. So how important is her as a been that she's done well to keep you in those games?
I mean, probably indispensable to England at this point. It would definitely be easy to say they haven't quite come together as a squad. And within especially these games, you need that one person to go out there and get the big score. That has been Nat Sivera a lot of the time, but you need that person to support her. You can't build a partnership on your own. I think that's where England went wrong in their first few games. I mean, take that first game against Australia before we'd even spoken last time. She was just this lone beacon in the England innings with not much support around her, and it's been this recurring trend for the England team. We've seen a few standout performances from Amy Jones has popped up, Tammy Beaumont has contributed, but the teams who are doing successful, mainly Australia, I think something like 6 of their batters are in the top 10 run scorers of this tournament. You suddenly think with them, it's outrageous, but you think Australia, you get them 3 down, and it's not even, you don't even feel win the game because there's about 5 more to come who can easily take the game away from you. And I think England and South Africa are both those teams who have struggled sometimes. 1 or 2 batters stand out a bit, but sometimes you need that scorecard, which when you go down it, there's, every batter in that top 6 making a contribution of above 30. And that's, in this game coming up, it's going to be the key difference, I think, between the two teams, and especially Nat Sivera's role for England, the same as Laura Woolvart for South Africa.
Yeah, it's actually going to be quite interesting to see. I know England didn't say they haven't played their best game, but let's go through what went wrong in the first 3 games and then what changed in the final 4. I know Heather Knight was talking about the 4 knockout games, and I know in those games, in the 3 of the 4 games, England actually chased games. They bowled first and they bowled teams out. I think they bowled New Zealand out for 203, India out for 134, and Pakistan out for 105. Was it just the bowling that needed to change, or what else came through in those 4 games?
I think in those 4 games, it was just the batters and the bowlers working in harmony, working in unison. I'm trying to even think back to the first 2 games. The first game against Australia, England's bowlers completely let them down. Australia racked up that 300 plus total. In the second, I'm even trying to remember the second and third games now because I think I've wiped them out of my memory. But in that game against South Africa, the bowlers they're not quite in the performance at the end, and it's a combination of, I think, when the team's presented with almost a problem of going here, 4 wins and you can do it, and that almost clicks something on in your brain and says, okay guys, we can still do this, and it sets that goal. And I feel that once you see that goal, which what England's done, that's one of the factors which has made them change their game. But the second factor, as I said, being the batting and bowling coming together. Heather Knight said that in that game against Pakistan, that was the first time their 2 kind of bowlers and batters, that those groups have come together. And it's all too and well, obviously, doing that against Pakistan and Bangladesh, some of the weaker sides of this tournament. But it's just going to be interesting to see whether they can continue that momentum against a stronger team like South Africa. They said they've just come into their almost peak form at the right time in the tournament, so this game will really tell. But it's a similar trend to what we saw, throughout the Ashes, of just really one side really puts through a standout performance and they're just let down by the batters or the bowlers. And I understand England have been away for a long time, but a lot of the other teams have as well. And this excuse of tiredness is coming up a lot, which I understand they've been away for a long time, but as everyone in the women's game wants to be, when you want to be treated as professionals more, you want to go on more tours, you want to be on an equal playing field with the men, you're going to have to get used to these longer tours. I always use the example of Chris Wokes for England. He's been away with England since the T20 World Cup, went straight onto the Ashes, went straight onto those series in West Indies without much break. And this is going to be something happening a lot more for the women. So they can't attribute their performances not coming together to tiredness. I don't think that excuse really stands. They've just got to think about the performances they put through when they work in unison, and that's how they're going to succeed in the semi-final.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about the women's game, about how it's changing. The last couple of years, it's becoming a lot more professional, for not just for England, but for everybody. That's a really good point. Thing here is the experience for England side. They haven't played that well, but how important is it to have those experienced players in there, the Crosses, the Beaumonts in that squad because they've won a World Cup. They know how to do it. They know how to go and win those big games. South Africa at the moment, they know how to get to a semi. They don't know how to get to the next to the next
Well, it's
line.
easy. Just win a
How
game,
important
Tim.
do you think that is? Huh?
I mean,
Yeah, but it's mental. From a mental point of view, how important do you think it is?
Massively important, to be honest. You know, as you say, those experienced players, they're going to be absolutely key because the pressure, well, it's actually interesting. I've always tended to notice across domestic competitions that you always seem to have better games in the semi-finals. There always seem to be closer affairs. And then often when you reach the final, one team seems to dominate. And it's not very often you get a close final. But the semi-finals are where the nerves come out entirely. I think they absolutely just burst out of both teams. So whichever team can rein them in the most and really control them will succeed the most. They'll be able to handle the pressure. I think England's is going to be key because the close games they've had in this tournament, they've lost. And apart from that New Zealand game, of course, but the games against Pakistan and Bangladesh, they absolutely sailed through to victories. So they haven't quite been on the spot as much. So they're going to have to look back in hindsight saying, our senior players, you've dealt with this before in the 2017 World Cup. How do we translate it now? How do we try and convey to these younger players what it feels like? I mean, all likelihood is that they will be playing Charlie Dean in this squad, just with her recent success and with South Africa's perhaps weakness towards spin. So it's the players like her who are going to be searching and looking to these more senior players and go, how do I deal with this pressure? How do I deal with the crowd watching? How do I deal with getting through my 10 overs? And that's really important. But I mean, in terms of this tournament in isolation, I think South Africa's in a much better mental state, just based purely off the games they've played. They've had some of the tightest games in this tournament so far. I mean, I don't know how you guys have made it and kept your heart rate low, to be honest. I would say they're definitely in a better place in terms of keeping their nerve. And obviously, again, with some of the experience of their players. And as you say, it sounds simple for us to say, but to get through this almost semi-final jitters for South Africa, they've just got to win the game. They've got to see it as a not the semi-finals, but just any other game and just get through to that win.
That's actually very true. But you mentioned somebody who I want to actually talk about now. Actually, Charlie Dean. I think she's played 4 games, taken 10 wickets, an average of 12, as well as Sophie Eccleston, who's the leading wicket taker in this tournament. Obviously, South Africa have got their own 2 in Ayabonga Kaka and Shubham Ishmael, and that's going to be a battle across both sides. But let's talk about the spinners, because looking at the games that the final 4 games that England have played, the spinners, either being Charlie Dean or Heather Knight, have taken 5 wickets against New Zealand, 5 against India, 4 against Pakistan, and 6 against Bangladesh. And largely it has been Charlie Dean and Eccleston. And in that game against South Africa in that final over, I kind of felt that in the final few overs, I kind of felt that Heather Knight ran out of spinners. And when I was looking at that card, I was surprised that they didn't actually bowl Charlie Dean one more over to see if she can't eke out a wicket with the ball turning away from the right-handers. How important have those 2 been, and how important will those 2 be in the semi-final? And also, why hasn't Charlie Dean played all the games?
I mean, they're going to be entirely vital. I briefly mentioned that. And we mentioned last time I was on about South Africa's weakness to spin. Regardless of what this wicket could look like, I think they need to go in with those 2 spin options 100%. And obviously with the additional spin option of Heather Knight. We've seen throughout, women's tournaments as well, that obviously in a kind of power hitting sense, a lot of the batters like that pace on the ball. I love facing seamers because it's more about timing and less having to put some of your own might. I mean, I've got no muscle to me whatsoever. So, of course, I want someone to throw the ball down at 65 miles per hour. The spin is a lot harder to generate your own power, especially, coming down the wicket or hitting those square shots, a square of the wicket off slow bowlers. So difficult. So the spinners in the women's game, you see them obviously often taking a bigger role. I mean, we saw with the India-South Africa game, spin in the final over. Australia have done that quite a lot with Jess Jonathan. They come in, they really take the pace off the ball, and it's just difficult to score off. Sorry if you can hear my dogs barking in the background there. But yeah, so I think they'll be really important. And this lack of playing Charlie Dean. I mean, I am very biased, so I've played with Charlie for about 6-7 years now. She went to my uni. Absolutely love her. So I'm definitely biased, but I've found it so interesting that England haven't played her in more of the games. They've seemed to be chopping and changing between playing Shrubsole, Dean, I think it's Davies, and then Emma Lamb, when they can't quite decide if we want more batters or more bowlers. But I find that really strange, because you often hear England in the men's side of things saying, thank goodness for Ben Stokes. He's the all-rounder. He brings balance into our side, so it makes the selection a lot easier. England should be saying the same about Nat Siver. She's that all-rounder in the England team, and therefore sometimes these problems about them saying, should we play one extra batter, should we play one extra bowler, really confusing to me. So I definitely would have played Charlie. I mean, you can just see from the impact she's made in those 4 games already that despite her inexperience, despite her age, she will just take anything on. You'll see her in the field throwing herself around. Batting, she needs a bit more confidence just to get up from that domestic level up to the international level, but she is a really good batter. She bats about 5-6 for kind of domestic setups, but her bowling's just coming along in leaps and bounds, and you see it with the flight and bounce she gets. I mean, I've said to everyone at our Hampshire women's nets that you've got, we've had the likes of Katie George, Susie Bates bowl in those nets. The bowler I'm most scared of is Charlie Dean, because I've never been hit in the stomach more and winded by a bowler. She just gets that bounce, and I'm incompetent as a batter. So especially against those lower order batters, I'm really surprised, as you say, she wasn't bowled for that extra over. She just tempts them with changes and pace, and as I said, gets that extra bounce, extra revs on the ball. But her in particular, as a complement to Sophie Eccleston as well, you've got Eccleston who can just hold down an end. She will do exactly, if you need wickets, she'll get you wickets. If you need her to hold down an end, she'll hold down an end. But she's got the experience, she's got the consistency. She can put the ball on the same spot 6 balls in a row. If you complement that with Charlie Dean, who's, she's younger, she's got less control, but she's mixing things up. She's a bit less, a bit more difficult to predict. And I think together, I'd like to see more I'd like to see this in all cricket, but I think a lot of teams are scared to bowl spin at both ends. There always seems to be this inclusion of Kate Cross at the other end, which I think is absolutely fine. She plays a great role in the middle overs. But sometimes just be a bit daring, have spin at both ends. It's worked well for England. Why not try it in the semi-final tonight?
I actually think it's a thing with leg spin as well. I think teams really struggle with leg spin. Like, for instance, for India in that final game, Deepti Sharma came in for Poonam Yadav. And having watched South Africa play in India twice, Poonam Yadav was always the problem bowler. And so when they brought in Deepti Sharma, you're like, okay, it's a spin bowler, but do you have somebody who can actually take the ball away from the right-handers consistently? And I think, obviously, and you could see in that final game, in that game, yes, it was a no ball, but as you say, using your might and your power to try and clear the boundary is a question, especially in the death overs. And so, I just was surprised and I thought maybe that was the change for England. But look, it's good to see that Charlie's probably going to play, and I would want that if I was England, because I think it gives them every chance to win the game.
If you just go back to that Indian game, in those middle overs when Indian spinners came on, we tried to hit square of the wicket, in front of and back from the square, and we kept hitting the fielder. Over after over after over, we're going to score with 3-4 and over, and India was suffocating us. So to have both Dean and Eccleston, who's number 1, oh gosh, she's got a great future ahead of her. 22. She's got
exactly.
such a good future.
She is. It was quite funny actually, because the first game she played in the tournament obviously was at like 1 a.m. at UK time, and all of the Southampton Ladies Cricket Club, who she plays for at uni, were in their nightclub for their sports nights. So as you can tell, they had maybe been having a few drinks, and they heard she was announced, and just this barrage of tweets came through spamming England cricket saying this is great news. They were listening to the radio commentary in this nightclub, and they suddenly heard the BBC commentators kind of saying, oh, she's not pulling her lines very well now. And my drunken friends emailed in to BBC TMS with a paragraph saying how much they love Charlie. She's so lovely. We love her so much. Don't be mean to her, which they read out loud on air. I literally woke up I think at like 2 a.m. going, hang on. And yeah, so I was deeply embarrassed by that. But she is just, she deserves all the success in the world, because you get a lot of players, they get called up to their international squads. There can be ego sometimes. She is the complete opposite. Every chance she has away from international training or training with the Southern Vipers, she comes to university nets, where a lot of the girls who play there are girls who are in their 20s, who have never picked up a bat before, and it's so difficult. And she'll come in and she'll coach them, and she'll come bowl to them and give them, adapt her bowling to the experience of the batters, and she'll do one-on-one sessions with the girls in her spare time, as well as balancing all her university work and just coaching on the side. She's just a really nice person. It's one of those people who I never feel ashamed about just bigging her up, because she really does deserve it.
Yeah. So from a batting side, I think you spoke about Nat Siv and how important she is to England. But Sophia Dunkley's had a really good tournament. I think she is the highest run scorer for anybody who bats 6 and below in this tournament. And so, can you just give us a little bit more color around her and her importance in the side, actually?
I mean, it's quite an interesting one, because I heard just after England's last game, they read out how many caps Sophia Dunkley's got, and it's over 50. And I kind of went to myself and I was like, hang on a second, it feels only the other day when she was making her debut for England. And I think it is that awful role of being a batter number 6 or 7, because you go under the radar so much, because you're either going to come in most likely when there is under 10 overs left at the end, and you probably have to play, you have to get your eye in soon, you have to start playing some more risky shots sooner, and often it ends in a premature end to your innings. Or on the other hand, you come in when your team is 50 for 4 or 50 for 5, and you've got to do this, difficult rebuilding innings, which sometimes doesn't go her way. So, I mean, I didn't know she was the highest run scorer for that number 6 position, but she is, she's so young despite all those caps still. But I really do see her, hopefully, in the future. I'd like to see her move up the order a bit more for England. I'd like to see her almost in a few years in those kind of 3-4 position. I don't think she could ever put that out the picture, because she's got the technique for it. She's got that ability to go through the gears, which we've seen with a few of those 30s and 40s. And I'm really glad she made it past the 50 mark the other day and had that chance to kind of say, look, I'm capable of going on to make these bigger scores. I'm capable of accelerating. She has all the shots, but I mean, the standout one is hit when she just hits straight down the ground. I've actually played against her once, and she hit me for a straight 6, where it's one of those ones where you're actually like, I don't think I could be mad about this, because that was the nicest shot I've ever seen. So yeah, she's an exciting prospect for England. They definitely got her into the team at the right time, because she's getting that opportunity to learn from the likes of Beaumont and Siver and Knight, who might actually not be in the setup in 3-4 years' time. So it's a good experience for her. And yeah, she's a adaptable player to the situation for sure. But I think her and Jones alike, I think looking at that scorecard, when I think against Bangladesh, when England were 4 down, I think they were under 100 4 down. I tuned in at something like 3 a.m. and went, oh, we're going to be bowled out for 150 easily. But those two, I mean, it goes to show how important they are in that middle order. England have had troubles with their middle order, undoubtedly. But if those two can fire and just create a foundation, then England becomes almost a replica of that Australia team, which we spoke about, of just you get a wicket and someone else comes in, you get a wicket, someone better comes in. And that's the kind of stable middle order I think England needs to achieve, but they've been struggling to. And similarly to the Proteas, I think they've also had some of their struggles once you get past that top 4 and making sure that middle order kind of fires.
That's true.
Yeah. We've got useful runs from Mignon lately, but you're right. In general, we have struggled. What about Heather's captaincy throughout? It's been a roller coaster tournament. But how do you think she's handled batting lineups, bowling partnerships, and just things in general?
I think I do definitely, I rate Heather Knight as a captain, actually. She gives me the kind of Owen Morgan vibes. It doesn't show too much on her face when she's in the field. It's always quite this demeanour of calmness, which I think is comforting for her players. But I actually think she started the tournament off in a particularly awful way. That game against Australia when they racked up over 300 runs and England only used 5 bowlers. I remember waking up and looking at the scorecard and going, what on earth? When the team's hitting you around for over 300 runs, that's when you're getting the number 2 batsman to come in and bowl their dodgy spin. It was, I think that first game for me showed a bit of a lack of innovation. And actually, there's a few losses again after that. I just think England maybe have been a bit stuck in their ways, which is a criticism which England's faced a lot recently with, first of all, team selection. There's always this kind of feeling around the England team that it's harder to get out of the England team than it is to get in. But also with those bowling decisions, they like to have their routine. They like to have Shrubsole and Brunt bowl those first 10 overs, then bring in Eccleston and Cross. It's very, very the same. A good comparison, again, always comparing to Australia, why wouldn't you, is that they had that game where they sometimes open with Perry and shoot, but in other cases they've brought Darcy Brown in to open up with Perry, and other times they've brought in Annabelle Sutherland earlier. So they really show that adaptability to what is happening in the game, who's our best suited bowler, which England haven't always necessarily shown. The recent wins against Bangladesh and Pakistan, New Zealand. I think New Zealand, she did show a bit more kind of willingness to adapt to the situations. But then I do feel as if with the Pakistan and Bangladesh games, England almost just slipped back because they knew it would be a slightly easier opposition into that realm of comfort where they know what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that in certain games, but even though you have a plan, I think the key thing is that you just need to be able to change it and adapt it. And South Africa is a side where you need to have 3 options ready to go because all their batters are so different as well. The way they accumulate their runs, their different shot selections. I mean, you're presented as soon as they open up with Waldvart and Lee. So one of them's doing beautiful cover drives, and then the other ones, if you bowl a slightly too straight ball, you're going to get hoiked over mid-wicket. So they need to be adaptable. I think especially with that opening partnership. Now, this could be controversial going into a semi-final, but I don't think, I've been saying this since England's first 4 losses, is that I don't think England should be playing Brunt and Shrubsole in the same, as a pair. And I think it's this, again, this complacency, this comfort, the same as which the England men have with Anderson and Broad, that this is our combination, we stick with this combination. It makes it very hard for, first of all, newcomers to get into the team, but also I think England's only taken something like 6-7 wickets in the power plays across this competition, and 3 of those were against India. Brunt and Shrubsole haven't quite been their best. They've had a few chances where they've come through and they've made a smaller impact, but it's nothing to what we've seen in these recent years. Meanwhile, you've got Davies, who's come into the team. She's really exciting. She has that nice away movement from the batter, and she's also so useful at the end of the innings because she has those slower balls, knuckle balls, everything. She's one of these younger players who has probably about 15 different mix-up deliveries. And you've also got, not that she's played a game in this tournament so far, but Tash Farron, who I'm still absolutely baffled. She hasn't been given that chance so far to go out there and play a game for England. But just in terms of this duo of Brunt and Shrubsole, it's just not been as effective for me as it has been in the past. And I think it would be a bold decision to make before a semi-final, getting rid of one of your experienced bowlers. But I just think it could be quite a daring move. Again, speaking about England being prepared to be flexible for oppositions, whether they would consider dropping one of Brunt or Shrubsole going into the semi-final.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. Because wow, it would be scandalous, especially if they lost.
Yeah, that's the only downside. If they lose, and I've suggested this, then I'm getting deported out of the country tomorrow. So
well, you and the coach, you can come to South Africa. We'll take you. So, what battles tomorrow do you think England needs to win in order for them to get over the line?
First of all, fielding. I think this tournament has been crazy. I mean, first of all, obviously, you've got the fact that it feels that all the cricketers are paid. I think I tweeted this. I said that it feels like they're all paid actresses because all these finishes have been crazy. It feels like a period drama or a telenovela with all these twists and turns and dramatic endings. But the catching has been, in particular, strange. there's either been, cases where with the West Indies last night, they dropped 4 catches and that was absolutely massive for them. And we saw when England played West Indies, England, I think, dropped about 12 catches. A lot of them, completely achievable to take. But then on the other hand, I think this tournament there's been some insane catches. We've seen Deandra Dottin. We've seen, was it Mignon Dupree's?
Yes, on the boundary against Australia.
Amazing catch. Ash Gardner took an incredible catch. Heather Knight has. Beth Mooney only yesterday took a catch at square leg, which I couldn't even dream of. It's been this complete contrast between the worst drops you could imagine and some of the biggest screamers I've ever seen taken. But the key word is consistency. No team apart from, I would say, probably Australia and South Africa have exhibited that consistency in the field. That's why those 2 teams are at the top of the table, 100%. And that's why there was that middle of the table clash between England, India, New Zealand, West Indies, because those teams haven't been fielding up to the standard they need to. If England wants to have a chance, they can't put any chances down with this South African batting order. They can't give them a second chance because they'll make the most of it 100%. And suddenly, as soon as that happens, the heads go down in the field, they can run away with it entirely, and that could be the game-changing moment. So for me, I'm most concerned about England's fielding. And then I think as well, which a trend we've seen across this tournament is the decision to bat or bowl first. I've actually got an insight from the camp at the ground who said that at this ground, it's a very risky decision to field second because the dew and the floodlights. I mean, we saw with, I think, Mandana's drop the other day. I think it was.
It was on the boundary.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was, quite a simple catch, but she's played there many times at this ground, and she said it's just the number 1 rule there. You don't want to field second. So it'll be interesting to see whether South Africa or England has got some local knowledge to see.
But South Africa are unbeaten in 16 matches batting second. So I think for England, it is one of those situations where you have to put South Africa into bat first. But it works with that whole rule. But if I'm South African and if I'm Hilton, cutting up every piece of cloth I can find, putting it out around the field with a lot of the reserves, and just swapping out dry cloths all the way through just to get through all the dew. That's what we used to do that's what South Africa used to do in Sri Lanka when you toured in India, especially at night. You just have cloths everywhere, towels just soaking up the moisture.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, there you go. I didn't know that. And I actually didn't know about that 16 kind of win streak batting second, but I think that's a thing you can probably attribute to the depth of their batting as well. A lot of their bowlers are even just main bowlers can hold their bat very well. They don't lose their head in those kind of situations. Whilst on the other hand, the trend of the tournament has been to bat first. I think that's where South Africa's a bit of an anomaly almost in this tournament, because you see England, they've had some wobbles, even Australia have had some wobbles, and a lot of the weak teams batting second. As soon as I feel the opposition gets above 250, it almost feels as if there's just this, we'll never chase that down. We can never do this. Even though it's such a contrast to the men's game where you see a lot of teams saying, no, we want to chase. We know how many runs we need per over. We can pace our innings. It's such a difference between the women's and the men's in this respect. I think it's good that South Africa has that ability to say, we'll bat first, we'll bowl, first. We're flexible to that. Whilst a lot of the other teams, including England, don't like a run chase or just don't know how to deal with a run chase. And I think it's, as well as someone who commentates on domestic women's games, as soon as the toss is decided, we put not real bets for legal reasons, but fake bets on going they're going to lose.
Studio
like 100%. Yeah, exactly. But it's just. I mean, in the domestic game, it's crazy how many teams just can't chase, especially in T20s we've seen as well. As soon as the score goes over 120, and it's something I think in the women's game particularly, a lot of teams can look to South Africa and say, how have they been so successful in this department? Let's try and replicate what they do.
That's actually quite
interesting. Okay, so what is your heart and your head telling you in terms of the result?
Oh my gosh! So I'm so torn on this, and I'm such a bad patriot in some elements of it because obviously I'm so pleased for England. As I've said, this bit of hope in English cricket. And I do think it's really impressive for them to come back from those 3 losses to 4 consecutive wins, get themselves into the semi-final, and thank goodness it's semi-final against South Africa, not Australia. No offence intended to South Africa, but I think everyone breathed a fresh breath of air when they realised they weren't against Australia. But yeah, I'm excited for this fixture. I think if England do win, it would be great to see them go up against Australia, get that chance of redemption after the Ashes. But then part of me is also like, one, if England go through to the semi-finals, I don't want there to be this attitude in England setup and say, okay, this is all, those problems we had in the first 3 games, they're nothing. We can brush them under the rug entirely. And that is something I feel they could do if England progress to that final. But I think that can't be done. There is a lot of problems, I think, coming out of this World Cup and this Ashes series for England, which they need to address before the summer. First of all, was complacency against these teams who didn't used to be a threat to the England of 5 years ago. But as we've said, India, South Africa, West Indies, New Zealand, they've all risen to England's level now. So they can't be complacent against those teams. They've got to, go out there as if they're playing Australia and really be competitive and, for example, like that. And then I think as well, a few of the players, this could be kind of the last tournament for them. 2 names come to mind with Lauren Winfield-Hill and potentially Anya Shrubsole. There has kind of been murmurs and rumours around the camp about those 2 players. And as we've said, what I said about it's quite hard to get out of the England team. I think after this tournament, England need to have a look at themselves and say, right, we've seen how other teams have taken a chance on youth in this tournament. And the one young player we've taken a chance on really in Charlie Dean, she has the top, economy rate of the tournament. And I just think hopefully that, Charlie's performance in this tournament will give them a push to go, look at our performers in the England Lions. You've got Eve Jones, you've got Lauren Bell, you've got Izzy Wong. Let's give them a chance.
Yes.
They bowl quick, Lauren Bell and Izzy Wong particularly. Izzy Wong is such a character. Why not give them a game this summer? Let's take a real introspective look at our squad and say, how can we do what other teams are doing and integrate this youth into our team? And then, again, I'm an awful patriot for this, but I love, and not to say again South Africa is an underdog, but in the whole scheme of the World Cup with this consistent England's won, Australia's won, England's won, Australia's won, part of me would love to see a non-England Australia final. And I know I can't say that, and BBC.
That's okay. I don't think we're going to be airing this in the UK, so you can say
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Good. But I just part of me would just really like to see the chance of. I mean, first of all, as I said, a different team in the final. It'd be great to see South Africa get past that semi-final stage, and I think it would be great for the women's game. And I think out of all the teams in this competition who I can see beating Australia is South Africa. England coming off that Ashes campaign with Australia, I have this fear that if they did get through to the final and playing against them, they'd just adopt this mindset straight away of, we'll never beat them. We didn't beat them in the Ashes. How are we meant to beat them now? And it would just feel a bit deflating. Whilst I feel that South Africa have this element of we will take anything on. My friend who, again, is in the camp, she's gone to me, she said, England they're being a bit nervy. They're being a bit edgy at the moment. Whilst she's been speaking to the South African players, they are so happy. They are so excited. There's such this mood around the camp that they've got this momentum. They can take it on. And I just think that actually looking towards that final, if any team could beat Australia, I think it could be South Africa.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that if you face a team twice in the World Cup, you should beat them, even if you've lost to them before. So my theory then would say England will go through, but it's not going to work tomorrow morning, but it will work on Sunday when we play Australia. Tim, I have a question for you. What's the battle that South Africa needs to overcome tomorrow to get themselves over the line?
As Melissa said, the spin bowling. When Dean and Eccleston bowl together or on their own,
Hold their full 20.
We have to at least not get suffocated by them. We saw against India, when they brought them on the little overs, how many times we tried to hit the ball square of the wicket, and again it was fielded by the fielder, which created a lot of pressure towards the end of our innings. So So we've got to be able to see off the spin bowlers. Have to.
Yeah. That's actually quite. That's actually because I was listening to Sinead's press conference earlier this morning, and her demeanor is so positive. She is so excited. She doesn't know what she's going to say to the ladies tomorrow, but she's saying that look, we've never been to a final before. We don't know how to get there. Well, they do know theoretically how to get there, but mentally, it's not a massive hurdle because they've never been to the final. There's no expectations, and I love that, and I think that team spirit is probably what's going to get them through over the line. They've played some incredible cricket. They haven't played their best cricket, but I hope that they save the best for that final game. I think tomorrow's going to be quite competitive, actually, Melissa. I think it's going to be quite very tight. Similar to that first game, because that first game went down to that final over, and I wouldn't have bowled. I think was it Nat Silver? Or was it Kate Cross? Was Nat Silver bowled that final over? I actually would have gone with. Actually, look, it's either Heather Knight or Charlie Dean. It was one of those two. Yeah, look, I think it might go down to that. Melissa, just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I think Dan, one of our listeners and our followers, says that you are a delight. So thank you very much for doing this. I wish you all the best tomorrow. It's going to be
not too much best.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
but we have look, it's sport. Anything can happen tomorrow. The toss could turn everything. Somebody could drop a ball, but I wish you all the best.
Somebody could bowl a no ball.
Oh my word, that was insane. But I just want to say, this: the Momentum Approaches. If you guys are listening to this when you're waking up, whatever it is today, I wish you all the best. We're so proud of you. We're so proud of you, and honestly, this is that moment. It's not it is a big moment, and as Sinead said, it has so many ramifications down the line. How well this team does in this World Cup, and Melissa says obviously we want to get you to the finals and win it, because if you win a World Cup and you come back as world champions, the landscape of women's cricket in South Africa will change forever. And so that is what's so important. And it's not about that weight on your shoulders. It's about enjoying the game. And I hope they actually do enjoy the game. And I think both sides, I hope they do enjoy the game, because the game of cricket was supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be drama. But we end up getting dramatic situations. But really excited for them. And you say it's 2 a.m., Melissa. For us, it's 3 a.m. So look, but look, we're gonna watch it anyway. We're gonna go through it all, and all the best. And thank you very much for joining us, Melissa.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Cheers.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Timmy, thank you very much, my friend. To everybody, remember it's 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Go out and get them, Momentum Approaches. Go out and get them. Take us to that final and take us home. Bring that trophy home. Wish you all the best. One last thing for me, Tim. Any changes to the 11, or are you keeping the same 11?
I was having a look at the numbers, the stats, and the performers, and with that ring of playing an extra spinner from you that I've been hearing.
I don't want that anymore.
I think
I'm over that.
We go with the same 11 that we had.
Same 11. Masabata class has had an insane tournament. Oh, by the way, it's Lizal's 100th game tomorrow and Sune's 100th game tomorrow. So congratulations to them. She didn't know in the press conference. Lita was like, "It's your 100th game tomorrow." She's like, "Oh wow." Really excited for the future of cricket in South Africa, and this is just the beginning. Win or lose, truly proud. But do follow us tomorrow. We'll be live at 3 a.m. South African time. Take you through to the test match starting at 10 a.m. and then we'll flip over the stream on 1WSR.com to go into the test match for the men's team, because we don't care about men's cricket. So we'll start with the first hour. We'll do that. You guys enjoy the cricket. We'll be screaming our lungs out, trying to get the women over the line. But tomorrow it's all about Momentum Approaches. So wish you all the best. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, good night, and besale kakafiso.